Story 1. My dad and I agree that headlights have become excessive, and Amazon is not favorable. Those are my safe topics. I believe discontent with Facebook is also quite common. I'm uncertain about his feelings toward Elon Musk at this point, but I know he dislikes how Tesla maintains extensive control over the vehicle, making it feel like ownership is limited. I am actively encouraging him to consider the importance of antitrust laws and greater corporate regulation. Story 2. Political ads and term limits are likely part of a broader issue. Everything on the internet appears to promote division rather than unity, which could be termed the echo chamber effect. Story 3. We need to ban reaction videos that add nothing to the original content, just the original and someone's face reacting. This will make America great, finally. Story 4. Oddly enough, the Affordable Care Act. In polls, Republicans tend to support its components as long as it is not identified as the Affordable Care Act or originating from a Democratic source. They appreciate the concept, they just prefer not to have Democrats associated with it. Story 5. Despite the attacks on its staffing and land use, every conservative I speak to shares my love of the national parks. Story 6. I feel like every time I say, we can agree on underserved, it gets flipped a year or two later. I remember thinking, well, we can at least agree that those against vaccines are misguided. That changed after COVID-19. We can at least agree that Ukraine should receive our support against the Russian invasion. Never mind, now some view the Russian leader positively. Billionaires shouldn't have an outsized influence in politics? So Elon can do whatever he wants because he helped a former president win. And so much more. Story 7. Most politicians are dishonest. No one is genuinely looking out for us. Their primary concern is re-election. Story 8. We agree on almost everything. We just disagree on some details. For example, both the average liberal and conservative believe in protecting children. We just disagree on when someone actually becomes a child. Both groups agree that racism is harmful. We just disagree on whether inequity is sufficient evidence to prove systemic racism. The list continues. Story 9. A lot of things, actually, including political policy. Research has shown that Republican support for liberal policy skyrockets when the policy is described without mentioning any party or politicians. They strongly favor the Affordable Care Act when it is explained without using that term. They even vote for progressive policies in Republican-dominated states where Democrats have minimal power. Story 10. The national debt is too high. The differences lie in what needs to be done to reduce it. Politicians have exempted themselves from the laws that the rest of us must follow. Once elected, they lose all incentive to change the laws. Politicians spend more time campaigning than working after they obtain their positions. Story 11. Both sides of the aisle consistently fail to support veterans. They often discuss assisting veterans but rarely take meaningful action. Story 12. I believe our similarities far outweigh our differences. Unfortunately, the media and certain politicians, along with misleading experts, have obscured our reality. Story 13. Most people, as long as it's not clearly labeled red or blue, unfortunately, are not aware of their own self-interests and have instead developed a sports-like mindset. We might as well start tailgating and painting our faces on Election Day. Story 14. Nazis are bad. The president is not above the law. Treason is a crime. This is becoming difficult. Give me a moment. Rapists should be in jail. Putin is not our friend. Democracy is a positive aspect of society. We cannot agree on that. Voting is a right. I give up. Story 15. I believe repealing Citizens United and implementing term limits for senators and representatives is a priority. Story 16. Most things, really. In the political context, we often focus on what divides us. However, there is much we agree on that is often overlooked because there is no need for discussion. For example, cornbread. There is nothing wrong with that. Story 17. I would say there is about 70 to 75% of things we agree on. Much of it is muddied by differing opinions on the cause of the problem. I am referring to the average conservative voter, not wealthy elites. The millions of people who voted for Trump are mostly middle class or lower. There is a wide range of issues that relate back to consumer satisfaction and expenses that I guarantee the majority of people in this country would agree on. Story 18. I believe that individuals on both the political right and left agree on many core issues but assign blame to different groups for those problems. For instance, on the topic of immigration, a person on the political right might blame immigrants for taking jobs, while a person on the political left may blame capitalists for not paying immigrant workers adequately. Story 19. If you're discussing end goals, the vast majority of average citizens, regardless of their political leanings, want pretty much the same thing. The difference lies in how individuals believe we should achieve those goals. In simple terms, what the vast majority wants is the best possible life for the greatest number of people. The notion that liberals want government control over every aspect of life or that conservatives only care about their own is completely unfounded. Regarding political issues that we all generally agree on, we could start with the idea that our society should take much better care of our military veterans. The fact that this idea has nearly universal support, yet the two political parties cannot work together on it, is a sad illustration of how broken the two-party system is. Story 20. Corporate America is a significant source of corruption. While there are disagreements on the reasons and methods of elite corruption, both supporters of the Make America Great Again movement and those who align with Bernie Sanders generally agree that corporate boardrooms lack morality. Story 21. The ultra-rich are the enemy, and the sooner everyone realizes this, the sooner we can work together. Story 22. It is mind-boggling that we all seem to agree that daylight saving time is undesirable, yet nothing seems to change. We also seem to agree that the United States healthcare system is broken, but we appear unable to fix it. I believe the vast majority agrees that military spending in this country is excessive, yet no politician would ever challenge that sacred cow. Story 23. The healthcare system in the United States is inadequate. The nearly universal reaction to the death of a man on the street in New York City is evidence of this. Somehow, people have been misled into believing that a single-payer system is worse due to the negative connotation of socialism, yet very few individuals do not dread what obtaining healthcare in the United States currently involves. Story 24. Many of you are clearly unaware of what the Republican Party platform actually is, which is how they continue to gain power. Story 25. I would say the majority of people are sane, normal individuals who are just trying to live a good, healthy, and safe life. The extremists on both sides can be disregarded. Story 26. Clean water and air are important, but the Republicans have proven me wrong. Story 27. Liberals and conservatives in the United States agree on protecting, defending, and abiding by the Constitution. However, the current leaders of the Republican Party do not share this consensus. They do not reflect conservative values. Story 28. Both conservatives and liberals agree on many aspects, especially regarding broad economic and foreign policy. The disagreement mainly arises over fringe cultural issues. Story 29. Used to be Dolly Parton, but I'm hearing talks about conservative states wanting to ban her free book program. Story 30. These categories do not exist presently. All conservatives are liberal, and actual liberals today are progressive leftists. Leaving behind such labels, most Americans agree on the key issues of today: deportation of non-citizen criminals and the closing of the border with a functioning immigration system in place, safety of women and girls in sports and the reinforcement of Title IX, access to abortion based on being safe, legal, and rare, a strong, growing economy, limited foreign involvement, and policies that represent American interests. There are those on the extremes who would make you think they represent the majority. This perception arises because they are the loudest and most disruptive. Story 31. Common sense gun laws. Most people agree on many of the common sense initiatives. It's the extreme sides of both arguments that create the impression of a lack of common ground. Story 32. Congress is supposed to represent the American people, but they currently represent corporations. I have seen people on both sides discuss term limits, prohibiting Congress from trading individual stocks while in office, and preventing Congress from accepting corporate donations. Story 33. I feel like we agree on many things, It's the implementation of how to fix issues that goes off the rails. We all agree that the government isn't the most trustworthy. We all acknowledge there is significant wasteful spending. We all agree that immigration needs to be reformed. These are three major topics, but we have very different ideas on how to address them. At this point, any solution proposed by one side would likely be rejected by the other side. Story 34. Either eliminate daylight saving time or make it permanent. The fact that to stop changing our clocks you have to choose one of these options or come up with an alternative is part of the reason it hasn't happened. Story 35. Food. While there are individual preferences, there are many commonalities when it comes to food. Story 36. Tesla. At Thanksgiving last year, my uncle ranted about how impractical these cars are. I was happy to chime in with their poor manufacturing practices and the fact that the company does not pay taxes. It was the most enjoyable holiday with him in over 20 years. Story 37. Multiculturalism in Europe is failing, with both sides having different opinions on who is to blame. Story 38. Spam calls and texts are excessive. Housing costs are excessive. The insurance industry is excessive. Auto prices are excessive. Access to healthcare is excessive. Food prices are excessive. Many people struggle with empathy, so generally, issues that everyone has experienced negatively tend to be the ones that are not controversial. Story 39. Well, first of all, let's take extremist groups out of the conversation. They stand for nothing on principle. I think largely conservatives and liberals want the same things: personal safety, national security, a thriving economy, good schools, quality healthcare, less corruption in government, and the list goes on. The differences in opinions lie in the causes and solutions to these issues. Story 40. I'm not sure about the situation in the United States right now. I thought about saying that pedophiles are bad and should be stopped, but I'm unsure if that's even true anymore. Perhaps I could express a wish that housing costs were lower. Additionally, I could say that trains run on tracks or that many trees have green leaves in the summer. Story 41. In terms of United States politics, both sides are tired of the current state of affairs, which has persisted for a long time. They have very different approaches to fixing the issues, but they all desire change. Even before Donald Trump, people were dissatisfied with the existing system. Barack Obama's slogan was change, and Trump's was make America great again. This highlights the divide in our country, but I believe both sides can agree on one point. They do not want this divide to continue. Story 42. The two-party system must end. The majority of both parties tend to vote for their candidate as the lesser of two evils rather than with enthusiasm. Story 43. Actual liberals and conservatives can agree that congressional term limits should be established. However, Congress would never vote to remove themselves after a few terms. Story 44. We need term limits for our politicians. Nobody should be allowed to serve for 40 years. We need actual progress from our leaders, not stagnation. Story 45. Take a look at some of the Fox News polls. I know Fox News has its critics, but they conduct many polls that reveal how close we are on some major issues. Story 46. There is legitimate waste in our government. One of the programs that was unwisely canceled was the initiative to create usability surveys for government websites. While there are thousands of government websites and compliance is necessary, spending $75 million on site usability surveys is excessive. Story 47. People who buy tickets and resell them for 4 times the face value have a special place in hell waiting for them. Story 48. I think that liberals and conservatives agree on most things they encounter daily. People of all political affiliations in all countries face the same basic issues: work, children, school, and more. Story 49. Everyone loves the idea of shorter election campaigns. Limiting all candidates to 6 weeks of campaigning with a small public budget is appealing. Many appreciate the prospect of not having constant attack advertisements for years. Story 50. We can probably agree that the mainstream media works to keep us at each other's throats instead of finding compromises that satisfy both parties. Story 51. The government struggles with financial management, which is proof that they should handle less money. Cannabis should be legalized and regulated similarly to alcohol. Groceries are too expensive. Minimum wage jobs should not be more common than jobs that pay a median income. Pineapple on pizza is not for everyone. Modified trucks are unappealing. Story 52. Bipartisanship is foolish, and both sides are unreasonable for their statements. Oh wait, you said to agree. My apologies. Story 53. Well, that depends on whether you mean the political leanings or the political parties. Regarding leanings, I think we can all agree that pedophilia is wrong and that we need more housing. As for parties, I believe we can all agree that Trump is unfavorable. Story 54. People who have contributed to Social Security throughout their entire working lives deserve to receive benefits upon retirement. Story 55. If George Soros were doing what Elon Musk is doing to the country, they would be losing their minds. Story 56. There are no conservatives anymore. They have been displaced by the extreme far right, which is now considered mainstream. Story 57. Many of us desire safety and security. We want to be treated fairly and oppose corruption. Most of us wish for a better world for our children, grandchildren, humanity, and nature. However, the media and politicians gain significant power and money by exploiting divisive issues that incite anger. This has led to a situation where anything is acceptable as long as it provokes a reaction from the opposing side. Story 58. Term and age limits for all elected and appointed officials. Remove money from politics to prevent wealthy donors from influencing politicians. Prohibit stock trading for elected officials. Story 59. I follow both echo chambers, and they express similar views under different names. The elections are manipulated, but only when we lose. The media is not trustworthy. We need term limits for Congress. George W. Bush was a poor president. It's good that Trump chose Jindal. I live in Louisiana. We will win every swing state in the next election. Our opposition is characterized as the party of the wealthy. According to the demographic breakdown, there is no significant political divide based on economic backgrounds. Story 60. Assuming you remove any association with politicians, political parties, or ideologies, both Democrats and Republicans overwhelmingly support policies that benefit working-class people. Story 61. Corporations are exploiting us, especially health insurance companies. Infrastructure is important. Story 62. We all desire prosperity for our nation. We want the next generation to be better off than ours. We hope for America to thrive as a country for centuries to come. Story 63. To continue increasing the Pentagon budget despite its consistent failures in audits and losses in ongoing wars. Story 64. I believe we can agree that ranked choice voting, though not widely discussed, is important. This method should be implemented in local and state elections soon. It prevents extreme candidates from the far right and far left from gaining power. Ultimately, this approach could make politics less divisive and more representative of the people's interests. Story 65. Maybe it is regional, but both sides around me are quite supportive of gun rights, including opposition to assault weapon bans. Story 66. Pedophiles are gross. Granted, conservatives might have a different definition of pedophiles, but you said mostly. Story 67. Nothing. I strongly dislike them and their country. You dislike me? That's surprising. I dislike you as well, along with the corrupt and bigoted leader you elected. Story 68. This depends on what you mean by liberal. In a traditional sense, liberal means pro-capitalist and advocates for limited government. Liberal is a centrist or center-right conservative ideology. The discourse in America has become so convoluted that many people mistakenly associate it with leftist positions. This confusion has contributed to current issues, where extreme far-right fascist ideologies are viewed as reasonable because they are not far from what represents the right side of the political and philosophical spectrum. So, asking if liberals and conservatives agree on many issues is, in a technical sense, asking what differentiates one type of conservative from another. In American usage, where the term liberal has become a catch-all for anyone to the left of full-blown fascists, it is difficult to ascertain. Right-wing individuals in America often reject scientifically objective realities regarding issues like climate change and biology. There is a fundamental disagreement on basic moral questions, such as whether empathy and human life have intrinsic value. Conservatives struggle to present a consistent philosophy, often prioritizing the preservation of non-sapient cells at the expense of the lives of clearly human women. It is a spectrum, so what one member of a hate group and one progressive might agree on will not hold true for everyone. I'm not even sure that simple answers like "the sky is blue" would be accepted if a media outlet published an opinion piece claiming that color is actually gray and that anyone who disagrees is a socialist. Story 69. No one wants a Tesla in 2025. Conservatives believe that Tesla vehicles are electric and driving one makes you seem weak. Liberals oppose Tesla because they view Elon Musk as a fascist who thinks that Hitler and Stalin did nothing wrong. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.